There was once a man whose name was Taffy Morgan, and Taffy Morgan's favourite thing to do in the whole world was to sing. But he was a terrible singer. Really, truly awful. Whenever he opened his mouth to sing, all the birds would take off from the trees and his neighbours would go into their houses and shut their doors and their windows and stick their fingers in their ears and wait for him to stop. But Taffy Morgan sang on because he loved to sing. And one day, Taffy was standing in his kitchen and the window was open because it was a bright, warm summer's day and he was singing his heart out. And at that moment, there was an old man walking down the street. And this old man was an old bard, an old poet of Wales. In fact, a very fine poet indeed, but he was also a very grumpy old man. He had a great long grey bushy beard and he was stumping down the road and he heard Taffy Morgan and he thought to himself, what is that terrible noise? And he went up to the open window and he looked Taffy in the eyes and he said, beth ar y fe ar wyt ti'n neud? Ti'n swnio fel dy fod ti'n lladd cath. What in the world are you doing? You sound like you're killing a cat. And then the old bard turned on his heel and stumped off down the road. And poor old Taffy. You see, his neighbours, despite the fact they shut their doors and their windows, they'd never been that honest with him. And he sat down in the kitchen and he felt quite at the bottom of the world. But at that moment he heard something. A knock at the front door. And he went to open it, and standing outside his front door were 3 of the Tylwyth Teg, the fairy folk of Wales, the little people. And the Tylwyth Teg looked up at Taffy Morgan. They said, "Ma chwant bwyd arnom ni, we're hungry, please can we come in?" And Taffy, who was a kind man, said, of course, croeso. He opened his door wide and the Tylwyth Teg came into his house. And that night, Taffy Morgan and the Tylwyth Teg had a great big party. They danced, they told stories, they ate, they drank, and when the sun came up, the Tylwyth Teg turned to Taffy and said, "You have showed us kindness, so we will show you kindness. Ask us for anything, we will give you one wish." Well, Taffy Morgan did not have to think for long. He said, "I wish that I could have a musical instrument that no matter how badly I play it, it always makes the most beautiful music." Well, there was a flash of light, the Tylwyth Teg disappeared, and in their place was a beautiful golden harp, telyn aur. Taffy Morgan picked up the harp, he put his fingers on the strings, he started to play, and like magic, the most beautiful music came out of that harp, flowed out of his window, into all the houses of the people next door, and those people followed the music. They came to Taffy's house, and when they reached his house, something very strange happened to them. The music flowed into their legs and their arms and their fingers and their toes, and each and every one of them started to dance. Well, from that day onwards, Taffy Morgan was very famous indeed. He got invited to play his golden harp in all of the parties, eisteddfoda, weddings, festivals. And this went on for some time, until one day he was invited to play his golden harp in his local village festival. And Taffy Morgan got up on the stage, picked up his golden harp, put it on his lap, put his fingers on the strings, and he looked out into the crowd. And he saw a familiar face. An old man with a long bushy grey beard. It was the old bard who'd been so rude to him a few months before. And Taffy got a thought in his head. It was not a very nice one. He thought, "I'm going to teach that old bard a lesson." And he started to play. And of course, the people started to dance. As soon as that music flowed into their legs and their arms and their fingers and their toes, all they could do was dance. And of course the old bard, he started to dance as well, but Taffy was watching the old bard. He was watching as the old man got more and more tired. He was watching as the sweat began to pour down his brow. Taffy played on and on and on and on. He played on and on and on, and the people were saying, "Taffy, stop, give us a break." But Taffy played on and on and on. He was enjoying watching the old bard get more and more tired. He played on and on. He played his golden harp for a full hour. And when he lifted his fingers from the strings, the old bard collapsed on the ground, sweating, out of breath, exhausted. Taffy Morgan was well pleased with himself, put his harp down, got to his feet, took a bow. But when he turned to pick up his golden harp had vanished. Because as easily as they can give you gifts, the Tylwyth Teg can take them away again if they don't think you've used them in the right way. And Taffy Morgan never saw his golden harp again, but he did carry on singing. So if you're out and about and you hear a sound that makes all the birds take off from the trees, you'll know that it's Taffy Morgan.